action has been taken against those monopolies. So the whole thing has been a complete farce. You were the only people, I think, who took action. That was in
yes, we're the only people who actually made an order forbidding a particular practice.
Well, if you were a Conservative, would you kill the goose that lays the golden egg? Of course you wouldn't.
No.
Look, I'm sorry to stop you on this, but I really have got a lot more questions, including one that I'm sure interests you. I've got one of this morning's papers here with a big headline saying, "Damaging Effects of Nationalisation." Well, and you've heard that from a lot of other quarters. This is the Financial Times. But you've heard it from working men too, and from a lot of other people. Nationalisation isn't working. I think it's a fair question.
Well, they really are wrong, you know. If you take the coal mines, you couldn't have gone back to things as they were. It was inhuman for the miners, and it would have led to a lot of industrial trouble. It's true, we're paying a bit more for our coal. In fact, we're paying noticeably more for our coal. I want to be quite fair. But we were living on the unjust treatment of the miners in the earlier years, and it wasn't right. And we're getting gradually a better spirit in the mines. And taking the nationalised industries as a whole, the charges or prices that they make as a whole are lower than in the case of private industrial enterprise.
They've gone up.
Gone up less, that is to say, the prices and charges have gone up less. And people who single out the nationalised industries are really not being fair. Now let me say this as regards the general approach of the Labour Party to public ownership is that we believe in public ownership where the public interest is thereby furthered. We don't apply a universal, dogmatic, doctrinaire view about it, whereas the Conservatives tend to apply a doctrinaire, dogmatic view in the opposite direction. We think that every case has got to be argued upon its merits, argued by us for the policy upon its merits, argued by the opponents on the merits against it, and to prove that private ownership is better. And that's our approach, and we think that as a whole public ownership has succeeded and has done a good job of work. Now, Megan, I have a recollection that the Liberals published a declaration about 1945. Now, was it really in conflict with what I've said, or not?
Not in the very least. All I can do is to cross the T's and dot the I's. That's right.
Yes, but there's a further question. I know a lot of people who wouldn't quarrel with what you've said, Mr. Morrison, but there's the problem of renationalisation and re-denationalisation and all the rest of it.
Well,
what about that?
What about let's deal with denationalisation first?
Yes.
What about the steel business? Why denationalise steel and give a present of £7 million to the shareholders that could have been kept in the industry? £7 million a year? £7 million a year. And what about transport? Here you've got the British public owns the most up-to-date, most modern, best equipped road transport fleet in the world. In the last 2 years it's made £17 million of profit. 17 million. And the Tories are selling it. They've got £75 million worth of lorries. They are ready to take offers to sell them for £55 million, and they're ready for the public to take a loss of £20 million. Don't let any Tory say groundnuts to me after that. This is absolutely monstrous, you know. What they are doing, and I charge them with this, they invited the road hauliers to subscribe to the Conservative Party funds. They promised them that if they subscribed, well, whether they subscribed or not, they said they were going to denationalise road transport. They are selling this profitable undertaking, and we are going to witness the break-up of the best road transport fleet this country's ever had. And I say it's a wicked, downright shame.
And the hauliers put Tory posters on their vehicles.
I'll say they did.
Mr. Callaghan, you're very eloquent, but can I have an answer to my question?
And I'm accurate, too.
Is it right to renationalise things that have been denationalised?
Well, it depends what damage has been done. As far as transport is concerned, there is a clear case. You cannot run transport in this country as close-knit industrial network of rail and road unless you've got the two working together. You cannot run this country if you're pulling them apart all the time. One or the other is going to sink. And the Tories don't care if it sinks as long as their friends make the profits.
Jim, isn't it the case also that the British road services have a much more efficient record than private enterprise? I mean, in the way the lorries are carrying more continuously heavy loads and so on?
Less empty return vehicles.
Yes, that's right. This really is so. They've got teleprinters in all the big provincial centres. They swap information about loads to go from one to the other, and so they save empty lorries moving. And there's one more point on this, you know, Mr.
Aren't they
Pickles.
more efficiently maintained, too?
Well, I was just coming on to that.
Oh.
What about this question of road safety now?
Yes, I agree with that.
More road deaths, more injuries per year, and yet we know that as these lorries go back into private hands, the standard of maintenance is not what it was, and drivers are being forced to drive longer hours than the law maintains. It's not done for their benefit, it's done for ours, because they're a menace on the road. And I say if Mr. Boyd Carpenter stopped fiddling about with selling the lorries and got on with dealing with road safety, we might make some dent into these road safety deaths that we've got.
Well, at least I'm not complaining that you're not answering questions. You've used up 2/3 of your time already. And I've got another one here, which another one here, which I think is important. This is from today's Daily Telegraph. Mr. Maudling, Minister of Supply, talking about controls and rationing. Says controls could not be used without rationing. They couldn't ration your grocer without rationing you. Now that. Who's in the dock on that?
Well,
You're not.
All right. Well, I'll say quite simply, I don't wish to be vehement. The last thing I would do would be to use moderate language. I'd never dream of saying a word out of
Do
place.
use a little. It might brighten up the election.
Well, all I would say is that it's just
After all, you come from a quiet city, Cardiff.
it's just a downright Tory lie, and they know it is. And if Sir Anthony Eden is an honourable man, tomorrow night when he appears on this programme, I wonder if he's looking in now. If he is, Sir Anthony, I ask you, Mr. Prime Minister, repudiate this poster put up by your slick young gentleman in the Conservative Central Office. You know it's a lie. Say so, and you'll regain the honour of the Conservative Party.
May I, is there time for me to add a word on this? Well, the main argument, as I understand it, is that we propose to introduce price control in certain cases. And we're told that if we do that anywhere, at any time, it's going to mean rationing. Now, that is really about the silliest argument I've ever heard. As a matter of fact, at this moment, price control applies to bread, and it isn't ration. It applies to milk, and it isn't ration. Now, are we really to believe that you can't extend it to any other essential foodstuff?
Yeah.
And not only that, we've been talking about steel a little time ago. The curious thing is that the Tory government themselves actually set up, when they denationalised steel, a board, one of whose main functions was to control the price of steel. Well, there's no rationing as far as I know there either. And of course, when the monopolies, which we've also been talking about, control prices, again, there's no rationing. And if the monopolies can control prices to swell their own profits, I say we can control them in order to keep those profits down and to protect consumers.
Quite agree.
Look, I've got another one here. I think this really is also one bowled straight at Gatesko's wicket. A Conservative leaflet, socialists have themselves estimated that their proposals for social services would cost an extra 500 millions, and then 800 millions, 200 millions, 300 and so on. They add it up to 1,800 millions. Mr. MacLeod, which I've got a report of here, said yesterday 1,200 millions. And also suggested a lot of taxes that you were going to put on to pay it. What's the answer to that one?
Mr. Pickles, I'm very familiar indeed with these stories, and frankly I've been astonished during this election at the way the figures are produced. I can only assume that the Conservative Central Office thinks of a number and multiplies by 10. That's really what it seems to amount to. I think the best thing I can do really is just to briefly run over the programme and show you how absurd the whole idea is. First of all, there's a whole lot in it which doesn't involve any increased expenditure at all, or at any rate it's a negligible amount. What we've been talking about, monopolies, for instance, well, that's not going to involve a lot more public spending. Then there are a lot of other things. One of them we haven't mentioned yet. That is allowing leaseholders to buy the freeholds. I think, James, that in Cardiff is fairly important, the freehold of their property.
London home counties, too.
I give you another example, incidentally, where we shall be bringing in money, because we have decided that it's about time that industry paid its proper share of the rates. And that will bring in money and will help local authorities, and will indeed help ratepayers as well. Well, then, of course, there are certain items where there will be government expenditure, but it is self-financing. That is true, of course, of the renationalisation proposals. When we nationalised steel and road haulage, it didn't cost the budget anything. We took over certain assets, we gave the shareholders bonds, and of course the interest was paid on the bonds out of the profits or surplus earned in the nationalised industries. You do have, I quite agree, in our programme certain items which will involve some increase. I'll try and go through them. First of all, there is the national assistance scales, where we think that jolly well has to be put up. Then there's post-war credits. We haven't had anything about that yet. But we believe that the time has come to speed up repayment here. This money is owed to the people of the country on the solemn promise of a coalition government. And it's really not good enough to pay it back at this rate when it's going to take 30 or 40 years to do it. Then certainly we do propose to develop our education system. Again, we haven't had time to talk about that in detail. But I can assure you that having been into all this, and you would expect after all that we would do so, I'm not in the least worried about the financing of it. On one condition, and I must make that condition, and that is that production goes up steadily, as it did under the Labour government between 1945 and 51. And to be fair, as it has done, though not so fast, under the Tories in these recent years. And the reason I say that is that as production goes up, earnings go up, and of course tax revenue increases as well. And we think it's perfectly proper that part of this tax revenue should be allocated, so to speak, for the development of the social services.
But let's get this quite straight.
Yes.
Does that really mean that you do not expect to have to put up any taxes, or will you have to raise them?
I don't see any reason why we should put up taxes. Indeed, I would hope that there would be something of a margin to enable us to reduce taxes on lower incomes. But I want to be clear, Mr. Pickles, that isn't to say that I haven't any ideas of changing the tax system, because in fact I have. At the moment I think that people, there is too much tax evasion for one thing, and I think that people who get their money too easily get away too lightly with taxes. And I'd like to see some changes in that direction.
You won't be giving large contributions to companies and dividend.
I'm afraid I can't hold out very much hope of that.
You may save a little there.
I must stop you there, because it's time I was asking the last question, and I'm going to put it to Mr. Morrison. I want to ask Mr. Morrison what, in his view, and he's got about 2 minutes or a bit more in which to answer it, what, in his view, is the real main issue, the deciding issue in this election?
Well, I think there's two main points. You see, running through these questions and answers, nearly every time is the issue as to whether the nation is going to be the master or the slave of its economic resources. How are we going to use the national revenues? How are we going to use the capital assets of the nation? How are we going to see to it that investment in industry is adequate in order to see that there shall be enough technical re-equipment so that the productivity and so on will be adequate? Now, our view is that John Bull, that is to say the British people, through government and parliament, has got to have a big voice in how this is to be done. And consequently, we think that government and parliament must have a hand in the business on behalf of the people, whereas the Conservatives believe in a policy of drift, as if there is nothing to be done about it except to leave the private owners of land and capital to do exactly as they like. And that runs right through the whole of this argument that we've been having tonight. The other thing is this, that we of the Labour Party have a long, passionate tradition in favour of the peace of the world. And we believe that we, including and especially our leader Clement Attlee, can handle this business better than the Conservatives. After all, Mr. Eden, Sir Anthony Eden, was against high-level talks in March. And the day afterwards he was thrown over by Sir Winston Churchill, who is no longer Prime Minister. And therefore we believe that we are more fit to handle the problem of peace, disarmament, and these beastly bombs than the Conservatives are.
But I want to say
and we want you to vote on the day of May 26th. Be sure you vote Labour.
Yeah.
Jolly
I never got my little